If someone ever asked me which moment in my life made my heart feel like it might burst from joy, yet ache from the weight of a secret, I wouldn't hesitate the day my daughter got married. That morning in California was so clear it felt as though every cloud had taken the day off, somewhere far away. The first rays of sunlight poured down over the old church in the heart of our small town, filtering through stained glass windows that glittered like thousands of tiny gemstones. The air carried the faint scent of roses and lavender, mingling with the cheerful chirping of sparrows on the roof, as if even the weather had shown up to bless the day. I stood at the end of the aisle, clutching a small bouquet. My heart pounded like the drumline of a marching band. Down the red-carpeted walkway, my daughter was making her way forward in the pure white dress she'd dreamed of since she was a little girl. A thin veil floated over her face, but I could still see her eyes, shining eyes that belonged to a young woman convinced that paradise lay ahead. Everyone else looked at her with admiration. I looked at her differently. In my mind, she wasn't just my grown-up daughter. She was also the echo of my late father's voice, the man who had left me a gift, or perhaps a burden. $9 million. I remember the day I got the call about my father's passing. He left me everything the ranch in Texas stocks that had skyrocketed in value and a bank account with so many zeros, I had to read the balance 3 times to believe it. I thought I might share it with my daughter right away, giving her an easier start in life. But then the memories came rushing back. I'd seen money turn siblings into strangers who wouldn't even make eye contact. I'd seen lifelong friends become enemies over a single check. And I knew wealth, if it arrives too easily, can destroy a person before they even realize it's happening. So I made a decision I wasn't sure I could live with. I stayed silent. When my daughter told me she was getting married, I was overjoyed, but also afraid. Afraid that if she knew she had $9 million waiting for her, she might not see marriage for what it truly is. In America, we call that a golden parachute, a safety net so plush you'll never fall too far. But sometimes that very parachute keeps you from ever learning how to land on your own. The piano began to play, each note striking deep inside me. My daughter took slow, graceful steps down the aisle, her arm linked with her stepfather's. I smiled, but behind that smile was a storm. I wondered, am I doing the right thing? Am I being selfish? Her gaze met mine for just a second. In that moment, I saw her as she had been at 5 years old, wearing a cheap plastic princess dress, wrapping her arms around my neck and saying, "Mommy, when I find my prince one day, I want you to be there to watch me marry him." Today, that promise was being fulfilled. But inside me, another promise one I'd made to myself still weighed heavy, to keep her inheritance a secret until I believed she was truly ready. The wedding unfolded in classic American fashion, laughter filling the air, friends embracing, champagne glasses clinking. But in one quiet corner of the reception hall, I stood alone, watching my daughter spin in her husband's arms. Everything seemed perfect, but I knew the real test was still to come. I overheard a relative whisper, "If her mom's that wealthy, why not buy them a big house?" Another replied, "Who knows? Maybe she's not rich at all." I smiled faintly. No one knew that a single signature from me could completely transform their lives. But I didn't sign. Not today. Not yet. When the reception ended, I hugged my daughter tightly. She whispered into my ear, "Thank you, Mom, for always being there for me." I just smiled and said nothing, because I knew that what I was doing wasn't about standing beside her every step. It was about letting her learn to stand on her own, until she truly needed me. And that was the moment I understood keeping the secret wasn't just a choice. It was a gamble bigger than any number printed on a check. They say that in America, money is freedom. But I've lived long enough to know money can also be chains. And if you hand it to someone at the wrong time, it can lock up their life just as surely. I'm not someone who hates money. I grew up in a small Texas town where every penny was measured twice before being spent. My father worked from the crack of dawn until the sun disappeared behind the hills. He saved bit by bit from the ranch, from cattle sales, from long, grueling cotton harvests. He always told me, money can buy you a house, but it can't make it a home. That's something you have to build yourself. I carved that saying into my heart. And when my father passed away, those words became a daily reminder, because now I held the fortune he'd left behind, a sum no one in our little town could earn in a lifetime. But the real reason I kept that fortune a secret came from what I'd witnessed over the years. When I was young, I had a friend named Melissa. We went to high school together, worked side by side at a little coffee shop on the corner. Later, she married a man who worked in real estate. Everything seemed fine until the day her father-in-law died and left them a huge inheritance. At first, I was happy for her. But within months, their cozy family dinners turned into tense debates about whether to buy a new car or invest in stocks. Melissa once told me, her eyes full of regret, "Money gave us everything, but it took away the way we loved each other." That sentence stuck to me like a shadow. I'd also seen one of my cousins change completely after winning the lottery. He bought a mansion, a sports car, threw lavish parties, and within 3 years, the money was gone. The friends disappeared, and he fell into depression. Money isn't the villain, but when it comes too easily, it makes people forget the value of hard work, perseverance, and facing challenges together. When my daughter told me she was getting married, I saw the trust in her eyes. She believed in love in the future, in the idea that the two of them could build a life together. But I also knew that in America, marriage isn't just about love. It's about money, responsibility, and the ability to weather a crisis together. I'd seen plenty of young couples divorce under the weight of financial pressure. If I handed her that money from the start, she might never know what it's like to scrape together rent, or the joy of buying something with money she earned herself. And I believe those experiences are the cement that holds a marriage together. I wanted her and her husband to learn how to discuss expenses, choose priorities, and face failure without a golden parachute waiting below. Keeping this secret wasn't easy. At family gatherings, when people talked about buying homes, investing, or retiring, I had to pretend I was planning and budgeting just like everyone else. Once someone asked me directly, "Have you ever thought about helping your daughter get an easier start?" I just smiled and said, "I believe in the power of independence." But inside, every time I heard about her late-night shifts, my heart clenched. I had to remind myself, this is for her. This will make her stronger. It might sound cold, but I think of it as an experiment not on my daughter, but on her love. If they can survive their hardest days still holding hands, I'll know their love is strong enough to carry the weight of $9 million. I once read in a book by a well-known American author, "Money is just an amplifier. It makes the good better, and the bad worse." I want to be certain that when the money comes, it will amplify the good in my daughter and her husband, not expose their weakest parts. The American self-made spirit, Americans take pride in being self-made, building everything from the ground up. Rags to riches stories inspire millions. I want my daughter to be part of that spirit so that one day, when she looks back, she'll feel proud that everything she has came from her own effort and the partnership she built with her spouse. Maybe someday she'll learn about the money. But when that day comes, I hope she'll look at me and say, "Thank you, Mom, for letting me truly grow up before giving me this gift." Keeping a secret isn't always betrayal. In my case, keeping this secret is a kind of love, a conflicted, painful kind of love. But one I believe is the right kind. The storm hits. Just 6 months after the wedding, the life my daughter and her husband thought would be paved with roses took a sharp, dark turn. The bad news came on a Monday morning. I was making breakfast when the phone rang. On the other end was my daughter's voice, hoarse, trembling. "Mom, his company just declared bankruptcy." I froze in my chair, the coffee spoon suspended in midair. In America, companies going under isn't rare, but when the person caught in it is your son-in-law, the man supporting a brand new family, it feels like someone's just yanked the rug out from under you. They were living in a small apartment in San Diego where rent is sky high. Losing his job meant their main source of income vanished overnight. Within weeks, they began falling behind on rent. Bills for electricity, water, internet piled on the table like a cold reminder that life was slipping downhill. Dinners stripped to the bare bones, I visited one rainy evening. On the table sat a single large bowl of instant ramen split into 2 portions with a few slices of boiled carrot. My son-in-law still managed to smile. "Want some, Mom? We can add a little more water to make it stretch." I shook my head and forced a smile back, but inside the image cut deep. I knew one phone call to the bank could make all their troubles disappear, but I still didn't make that call. Odd jobs and survival. Unable to find work in his old field, my son-in-law took whatever jobs he could, delivering packages, assembling furniture, even doing construction labor. My daughter took the night shift at a 24-hour coffee shop and baked custom orders during the day. In America, people call it the hustle, working non-stop just to stay afloat. Watching them, I felt equal parts pride and heartbreak. Every time I heard my daughter on the phone, her voice so tired I just wanted to scream, "Honey, I have money, I can help you right now." But I swallowed those words, convinced this challenge would make them stronger. Loss beyond money. As the financial strain grew, the invisible things began to crack. One day I stopped by and noticed the wooden chair in the living room was gone. Then the TV. Then even the tea set I'd given them as a wedding gift. My daughter kept insisting everything was fine, that they just wanted to live more simply. But I knew it was a cover for the worry gnawing at them daily. My sleepless nights. Many nights, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, picturing my daughter standing at a cashier's counter, counting out coins to pay for milk. I had to keep reminding myself, you're not helping now because you don't love her. You're doing this so she learns to steer her own ship. But my heart disagreed. It screamed that I was being cruel. Some relatives had a vague idea of their struggles. Once my younger sister asked bluntly, "Are you really okay with letting them fight this hard?" I just smiled. They need to go through this to truly value what they have. It sounded firm, but when I got home, I cried until my eyes swelled. A flicker of hope. Through it all, I saw something precious. They never turned on each other. In America, plenty of marriages crumble after just a few months of financial stress. But those two still woke up early together, worked side by side, and ended each day in each other's arms. I began to realize maybe these hard days were forging a kind of strength money could never buy. And that was why I kept waiting. Because I believed that if they could survive this storm, they'd become unshakable. And when that day came, the $9 million wouldn't be a lifeline, it would be their wings. A new chapter in Seabrook. When summer touched California, they made a decision: leave the city. San Diego, with its skyscrapers, crowded streets, and crushing rent, would become a closed chapter. They packed what was left: a few boxes of clothes, my daughter's baking tools, and my son-in-law's old but sharp woodworking kit. They loaded it all into an aging pickup and headed north toward a coastal town whose name alone breathed peace: Seabrook. Seabrook looked like something out of a coastal American movie. The main street was paved with red bricks lined with small shops and wooden signs where everyone knew each other's names. The air carried the scent of sea salt mixed with fresh roasted coffee, and the sound of waves was the town's constant background music. They rented a tiny wooden house just a short walk from the beach. The living room doubled as the kitchen, and the garage out back was converted by my son-in-law into a woodworking shop. My daughter spotted an empty storefront on the corner, barely 450 square feet, but flooded with golden morning light through its big front window. She knew instantly this would be her dream bakery. To save money, they did almost everything themselves: painting walls, building shelves, crafting a counter from reclaimed wood. My son-in-law spent his days in the workshop, fixing furniture for neighbors and building tables and chairs for the bakery. In the evenings, they tested recipes together: crisp New England-style apple pies and salted caramel waffles my daughter hoped would become the specialty of Seabrook. The early struggles. The bakery opened on a bright, sunny Saturday morning. I was there, standing at the street corner watching. The sign "Sweet Tide Bakery" swayed gently in the ocean breeze. But all morning, only a handful of people came in, most of them curious neighbors. I noticed my daughter's smile falter when she glanced at the clock and saw they'd sold only 5 pastries. My son-in-law kept smiling, handed her a cup of coffee, and said, "Everything starts at 0. We'll just take it one step at a time." I knew he was right. In America, opening a small shop in a coastal town isn't just about having good products. You have to win the community's heart. And that takes time, trust, and persistence, tying themselves to the community. In the weeks that followed, they threw themselves into every local event. My daughter brought pastries to the summer festival where townsfolk gathered by the shore for live music and kite flying. My son-in-law volunteered to fix broken chairs at the library and built new shelves for the elementary school. Small-town Americans value community spirit. They don't just buy your product, they buy your story. And theirs was this a young couple who left the city for the sea, starting over from nothing. Slowly, things began to change. An elderly woman came by every morning for waffles and a short chat. A young couple ordered their wedding cake. A seaside restaurant asked my son-in-law to make wooden tables and chairs for them. Every time I visited, I saw Seabrook embracing them a little more. Mornings were filled with the scent of waffles, apple pies, and caramel-topped treats drifting down the street. Afternoons carried the steady rhythm of sawing and hammering from the workshop, the heartbeat of a home being rebuilt. Once I walked in and found my daughter teaching a little girl how to make cookies, smiling the whole time. Later, that girl told her mother, "I love this bakery. It smells and feels just like Grandma's house." My eyes blurred when I heard that, watching from the sidelines. Though I let them stand on their own, I was always watching. I knew which months they could pay rent comfortably and which months they had to scrape by. I saw them learning something new every day: how to manage expenses, how to market on social media, how to handle a customer complaint. I remember one evening when my daughter called Mom today. We sold out before closing time. Her voice was as bright as a child who'd just gotten an A+. I smiled, congratulated her, but said nothing about the money sitting in my bank. I knew that the joy of earning something yourself, was the experience I wanted her to have before I gave her any big gift. Signs of a new beginning. 3 months after moving to Seabrook, the bakery and the workshop had regular customers. They no longer worried about affording ingredients or fixing the saw. They started talking about expanding the menu, adding custom orders. I realized the storm hadn't sunk them. It had carried them to a new shore, where they'd found themselves and a community ready to lift them up. And I knew. The moment I'd been waiting for was close, but not today. Today I'd let them keep steering their own ship, let the scent of pastries and the sound of saws keep drawing the town closer to them, bit by bit. The turning point. It was a Thursday evening in autumn. The sky over Seabrook was wrapped in black velvet scattered with tiny silver stars. The sea breeze slipped through the streets carrying its faint saltiness. I drove slowly along the brick-paved road into the town center, where Sweet Tide Bakery still glowed with light. From outside, I peered through the big front window. The shop had been closed for hours. The closed sign hung neatly on the door, but the warm yellow light still poured out, catching floating dust motes and making the room look wrapped in a soft haze. My daughter was kneeling carefully, wiping down each table leg. Her long hair was tied back a few strands loose and clinging to her cheek with sweat. My son-in-law sat at the counter, a ledger open before him, numbers filling the page between stacks of receipts. I didn't walk in. I wanted to hold on to this image, one that might etch itself deeper into my memory than even their wedding day. Inside, no one spoke for a while. Only the soft tap of a pencil on wood, the swish of cloth against a table, and somewhere far off the ocean's steady waves blending into the silence. Then my daughter broke it. Her voice small, as if speaking louder might shatter the fragile peace. "We'll try for a few more months." My son-in-law looked up. The dark circles under his eyes were clear, but so was the resolve in them. He got up, went to the kitchen corner, poured her a mug of hot herbal tea, and set it in front of her. "We'll make it. We don't need saving, we just need each other." No grand promises, no movie script speeches, just an ordinary sentence, but I felt its weight. It was like the mast of a ship, not beautiful, but the one thing keeping it from being swept away. I saw my daughter smile. It wasn't the innocent grin from her wedding day, nor the strained smile she'd worn in hard times. It was the smile of a woman who'd tasted sweat tears and fragile hope and still chose to stand. I stood outside with my hands clasped. My heart swelled with pride and ache. I'd been waiting for this for over a year, the moment I knew they weren't just surviving, but growing stronger and more united than ever. Part of me wanted to walk in right then, hand them the check and say, "You don't have to try anymore. I'll take care of you." But another part whispered, "Let them finish this night their way, untouched by any money." I leaned back against the lamppost, looking up at Seabrook's night sky. The light from the bakery reflected off the damp brick street, making it look as if the whole block was glowing. And in that moment, I knew it was time. Not because they were exhausted, but because they had proven their true strength. Not because I wanted to rescue them, but because now the gift I'd been holding would be a push to help them fly higher, not a lifeline to cling to. I walked away quietly, leaving them in that warm-lit room still working side by side. In my mind, I was already planning for the morning I'd walk in, not just as a mother, but as an investor in the dream of the two people I loved most. The morning everything changed. The next morning, the first light in Seabrook broke through a thin veil of mist spilling over the damp, brick-paved streets. I woke earlier than usual, not from restlessness, but because my heart was pounding like a battle drum. Last night, I'd made my decision. Today would change everything, not just for my daughter and son-in-law, but for me as well. I put on the cream cardigan my daughter once said made me look as warm as a fresh-baked pie, then slipped a signed check into a plain white envelope. The amount was enough to expand the bakery, grow the woodworking shop, and still leave a cushion for harder times. But more than that, it marked the end of a journey they had fought and won entirely on their own. Walking into the bakery, I arrived at Sweet Tide Bakery before they even unlocked the door. The glass front was still shut, the closed sign hanging loosely. But I knew inside my daughter would already be shaping the first batch of dough, and my son-in-law would be in the back workshop, the faint hum of saws and taps of hammers starting the day. I knocked. My daughter opened the door, surprised to see me holding a smile and a steaming cup of coffee from the shop across the street. "Mom, you're here early. I wanted to be your first customer today." She grinned and let me in. The room smelled of flour and melting butter, warm as an autumn embrace. I sat at the window table where the morning sun cut across the room, turning floating dust motes into tiny sparks of light. The moment I gave the gift. I placed the envelope on the table. My voice was slow but firm. "I have something I want to give you both." She frowned, wiped her hands on her apron, and sat across from me. My son-in-law walked in, his hands still dusted with wood shavings. I slid the envelope toward them. "This is money your grandfather left me. I've kept it all this time, and now I want you to use it to grow the bakery and the woodworking shop." My daughter opened the envelope and saw the number on the check. Her eyes widened, then blurred with tears. "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" I took her hand, the same small hand I had held when she took her first steps. "Because I wanted to be sure. I needed to see that you could weather the storms on your own so that when you got this money, it would be wings, not a burden." My son-in-law stayed quiet, but I saw the redness in his eyes. He came around the table and hugged me tight. Not a polite hug, but the kind that says I understand, and I'm grateful. "Thank you, Mom. Not just for the money, but for believing in us." My daughter's reaction. She sat there holding the check, wiping her eyes now and then laughed through her tears. "You know, last night we told each other we'd push on for a few more months because we didn't want anyone to rescue us." I smiled. "I know. I heard. And that's exactly why I knew today was the right time." New plans. We sat and talked. She wanted to expand the shop ad space for customers to sit, experiment with new pastries. He planned to invest in better woodworking equipment and hire an assistant to take on more orders. I didn't interfere, I just listened. This money was theirs to turn dreams into reality, and I trusted them to spend it wisely. A morning full of quiet joy. When the first customers walked in that day, my daughter's smile was brighter than ever. My son-in-law went back to his workshop, the saws and hammers sounding louder, livelier. No one else knew that this morning marked a brand new chapter. Driving home along the coast, the waves rolled steady, the sun climbing higher. My heart felt lighter than it had in years, lighter for having no secret left to keep. I knew I had been right to wait, because today I wasn't just giving them money. I was giving them trust, recognition, and the freedom to fly with wings they had built themselves. 1 year later, Seabrook was no longer the quiet little town it had been. The main street buzzed with life, and in the middle of it stood Sweet Tide Bakery with its gleaming new sign and a line out the door every weekend. The air carried the scent of waffles, apple pies, and salted caramel, so much so that the local papers ran stories calling it a must-stop in Seabrook. My daughter had not only expanded the shop, but redesigned it in a coastal-style white walls, oak tables, and vases of wildflowers from nearby fields. At the other end of the street, the woodworking shop had transformed too. From a single old saw and a few basic tools, it now had modern equipment, a skilled assistant, and an order list booked for months. He wasn't just repairing furniture anymore. He was crafting high-end custom pieces for restaurants as far away as San Francisco and Los Angeles. One afternoon I visited and saw him carefully carving the word Seabrook into the back of a walnut bench. When I asked, he just smiled. "It's a gift for the town for the park near the shore. This place has given us so much." Giving back. Once their work was stable, they came to me with an idea for their profits. Without hesitation, they decided to create the Charles Bennett Scholarship Fund, named after her grandfather, for local students who wanted to study culinary arts or woodworking. At the first award ceremony, I sat in the audience of Seabrook High's auditorium. My daughter stood on stage, microphone in hand, speaking about the grandfather she loved and her own journey from nothing. Her voice caught as she said, "Grandpa always believed that your hands and your heart were your greatest assets. We just want to carry that belief forward." The whole room rose in applause. I looked at her, my chest swelling with pride I could barely put into words. That night, after the crowd had left, I stayed to help them clean up. She hugged me from behind and whispered, "Mom, I know. If you hadn't waited, we would never understand the real value of what we have today." My son-in-law nodded. "That gift wasn't just money, it was timing, and you chose right." I just smiled. There was nothing left to explain. The town transformed. Their success brought ripple effects to Seabrook. New shops opened, tourism increased, and seasonal festivals grew larger each year. Every time I walked past the park and saw the walnut bench with Seabrook carved into it, I thought of the day they first arrived with only a few boxes in the back of a beat-up truck. The distance between then and now couldn't be measured in dollars, but in months of grit, late nights, and moments where they almost gave up, but didn't. My quiet pride. Some nights I strolled along the shoreline, listening to the waves breaking against the sand. I'd think about how if I'd given them the money sooner, they might never have come to Seabrook, never opened the bakery, never built the community they now loved. And maybe they would never have known the incomparable feeling of succeeding because of their own sweat and faith. I'd once feared that keeping the secret would cost me my daughter's trust. But the opposite had happened. It had brought us closer. One day I walked into the bakery and saw a new photo on the wall of the three of us on the morning I'd handed them the check. I was sitting at the window table. They stood beside me, each with a hand on the white envelope. Below the photo was a small inscription, "The greatest gift isn't money, it's believing in what we can do." I stood there for so long, the clerk finally asked, "Can I get you something?" I smiled. A latte and a caramel waffle, like always. That afternoon, I sat on the porch table watching customers come and go, hearing my daughter's laughter behind the counter, and my son-in-law on the phone ordering wood for a new project. The golden light of late day washed over the street, and I realized I was smiling too. I had once feared I'd waited too long. But seeing them now hand in hand, eyes bright, I knew I'd given them the gift. At exactly the right time.